In the small city of Crestwood, life moved at a steady pace. The streets were lined with cozy homes and local businesses that gave the town its charm. But beneath this peaceful exterior lay simmering tensions between law enforcement and minority communities. For years, residents had spoken about unfair treatment by police officers, but little seemed to change. Among those who felt these struggles deeply was Maya Thompson, a bright and passionate young woman in her mid-20s. Maya wasn't just anyone in Crestwood. She was the daughter of Mayor Angela Thompson, a strong leader known for her efforts to improve the community. Despite growing up in privilege, Maya chose not to rely on her family's name. Instead, she dedicated herself to activism, speaking out against racial injustice and advocating for police reform. Her work often put her at odds with local authorities, but Maya didn't care. She believed in fighting for what was right, no matter how difficult it got. On this particular evening, Maya decided to take a break from her busy schedule. After spending hours working on a project at her office downtown, she climbed into her car and turned on the radio. Soft jazz filled the air as she drove through the quiet streets of Crestwood. The sky was dark, dotted with stars, and the cool breeze coming through her open window made the drive feel soothing. It was one of those rare moments when Maya could relax and let her mind wander. As she approached an intersection near the heart of downtown, Maya noticed something unusual in her rearview mirror. 2 squad cars appeared behind her without warning, their flashing lights cutting through the darkness. There was no siren, though, which struck her as odd. Confused, Maya pulled over immediately, assuming it must be a routine traffic stop. She parked her car along the curb and waited patiently, wondering if she had accidentally broken some minor rule while driving. But what happened next shattered the calm of the evening. Before Maya could even reach for her license or registration, 4 officers stepped out of their vehicles, surrounding her car with guns drawn. Their voices rang out sharply in the night. "Step out of the vehicle slowly," one officer commanded, his tone cold and commanding. Another shouted, "Keep your hands where we can see them." Maya froze for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe what was happening. Slowly, she raised her hands and did exactly as they instructed, opening her car door cautiously. As she stepped onto the pavement, the chill of the night seemed to intensify. The officers ordered her to place her hands on the hood of her car, and she complied, feeling both scared and confused. It was then that Maya realized something unsettling. None of the officers acknowledged her identity, not even when she tried to explain who she was. "I'm Maya Thompson," she said firmly, hoping her last name would carry weight. "My mother is the mayor." But her words fell flat. To the officers, she wasn't the daughter of a prominent politician. She was just another black woman driving late at night in a part of town where suspicion ran high. The seconds stretched into minutes as Maya stood there, her breath visible in the cold air. Passers-by began gathering around the scene, drawn by the commotion. Some watched silently, while others pulled out their phones to film the incident. Whispers spread among the crowd, and soon murmurs of outrage could be heard. One man yelled, "What's going on here? Why are you treating her like this?" Another woman shook her head, muttering under her breath about racial profiling. For Maya, the experience was overwhelming. She felt humiliated, angry, and powerless all at once. Her mind raced with questions. Had someone reported her car for no reason? Was this really happening because of the color of her skin? Despite her fear, Maya tried to stay composed. She knew losing her temper wouldn't help the situation. Still, the weight of the moment pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. Back at City Hall, Mayor Angela Thompson was unaware of the chaos unfolding just blocks away. She had spent the evening reviewing documents and preparing for an upcoming council meeting. Exhausted but focused, she barely noticed the time passing. That changed when her phone rang unexpectedly. On the other end of the line was a concerned citizen who recognized Maya during the traffic stop. The caller described the horrifying scene in detail, leaving Angela stunned. Without hesitation, Angela grabbed her coat and rushed toward the location, accompanied by her security detail. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions: fear for her daughter's safety, anger at the thought of such blatant discrimination, and guilt for not being there sooner. When she arrived at the scene, the sight of Maya in handcuffs brought tears to her eyes. "Release her now," Angela demanded, her voice shaking with emotion. At first, the officers ignored her, continuing to question Maya as if nothing was wrong. But eventually they relented, removing the cuffs reluctantly. Even then, they refused to apologize or admit fault. Instead, they doubled down on their accusations, suggesting Maya's presence in the area warranted suspicion. It was a stark reminder that even the mayor's authority couldn't shield her family from the deep-seated biases within the system. As the night wore on, Angela stayed close to Maya, wrapping an arm around her shoulders protectively. Though shaken, Maya managed a weak smile, grateful to have her mother by her side. Together, they left the scene, vowing to fight back against the injustice they had witnessed firsthand. Though the immediate ordeal was over, the ripple effects of that night were only beginning to unfold. Little did they know, the events of this evening would spark a movement, igniting conversations about race, power, and accountability that would resonate far beyond Crestwood's borders. As Maya stood by her car, her hands pressed against the cold metal of the hood, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The officer's behavior didn't match what she had come to expect from a routine traffic stop. There were no questions about speeding, broken taillights, or expired tags, things people typically got pulled over for. Instead, the situation escalated quickly, with the officers acting as though they were dealing with someone dangerous. One of the officers approached Maya cautiously, his hand still resting on the grip of his gun. "Do you know why we stopped you?" he asked, his voice sharp and accusatory. Maya shook her head, trying to stay calm despite the fear building inside her. "No, sir," she replied politely. "I don't understand what's going on." The officer ignored her response and began circling her car, shining a flashlight into the windows. He peered inside, inspecting the seats, the dashboard, and even the back seat, as if searching for something incriminating. Meanwhile, another officer stood nearby, keeping his weapon trained on Maya. She could feel their eyes on her, scrutinizing her every move, and it made her skin crawl. "Step away from the vehicle," one of them ordered suddenly. Maya hesitated, for a split second, unsure of what to do next. But when she saw the officer's finger twitch near the trigger of his gun, she obeyed immediately. She took a few steps backward, her heart pounding in her ears. Her mind raced with possibilities. Had someone reported her car for some reason? Was there a misunderstanding? Before she could ask anything, the same officer who had been questioning her spoke again. This time his tone shifted, from suspicion to outright hostility. "We've had reports of prostitution activity in this area," he said bluntly. "Your car matches the description of a vehicle involved in those incidents." Maya blinked in disbelief. Prostitution? The accusation hit her like a punch to the gut. She had never felt so insulted in her life. All she had done was drive home, after work, yet here she was being treated like a criminal. "That's ridiculous," she said firmly, her voice trembling slightly. I wasn't doing anything wrong, I'm just driving home." But her protests fell on deaf ears. The officers showed no interest in listening to her side of the story. Instead, they continued to act as though they had already decided she was guilty. One of them gestured for her to turn around, and before she knew it, cold metal cuffs clicked tightly around her wrists. Maya winced as the pressure dug into her skin. She opened her mouth to object, but the words caught in her throat. What could she say to make them see reason? By now, a small crowd had gathered at the edge of the scene. Some bystanders whispered among themselves, while others recorded the incident on their phones. A few brave souls shouted at the officers, demanding to know why they were treating Maya this way. "She hasn't done anything," one man yelled angrily. "Why are you harassing her?" The officers ignored the commotion, focusing solely on Maya. One of them leaned closer, his face inches from hers. "You're going to have to come with us," he said sternly. "We'll sort this out at the station." His words sent a chill down Maya's spine. She couldn't believe this was happening. How could they take her into custody based on such flimsy accusations? Desperate to clear up the misunderstanding, Maya tried once more to explain herself. "My name is Maya Thompson," she said, enunciating each word carefully. "My mother is Mayor Angela Thompson. Please, you can call her and verify who I am." For a brief moment, she thought her plea might work. Surely mentioning her family's prominence would make them realize their mistake. Instead, the officers exchanged skeptical glances. "We'll look into that," one of them muttered dismissively. But their tone suggested they didn't believe her, or worse, they didn't care. To them, she was just another black woman standing in front of them, regardless of her last name or connections. Standing there in handcuffs, Maya felt a wave of emotions crash over her. Humiliation burned in her chest as she imagined how this must look to the growing crowd of onlookers. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, fueling her frustration at the blatant injustice unfolding before her eyes. And yet, through it all, she forced herself to remain composed. Losing control wouldn't help her situation. It might only make things worse. As the minutes dragged on, Maya noticed subtle changes in the atmosphere around her. The crowd grew louder, their voices rising in outrage. Someone called out, "This is racial profiling." Another added, "They wouldn't treat a white person like this." These comments resonated deeply with Maya, echoing thoughts she'd had since the moment the officers pulled her over. It wasn't just about her. It was about a pattern of behavior that had plagued communities like hers for generations. Despite the chaos surrounding her, Maya found herself reflecting on her own experiences with discrimination. She thought about the times she'd been followed, in stores, the suspicious stares she'd received in upscale neighborhoods, and the countless microaggressions she endured daily. None of those moments compared to what she was facing now, but they all stemmed from the same root cause: prejudice. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Release her now." It was her mother, Mayor Angela Thompson, pushing her way through the crowd. Angela's presence brought a mix of relief and embarrassment for Maya. On one hand, she was grateful to see her mom stepping in to protect her. On the other hand, she hated that Angela had to witness this degrading moment. Angela wasted no time confronting the officers. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice firm and authoritative. "Why is my daughter in handcuffs?" The officers hesitated, clearly unprepared for the mayor's sudden arrival. One of them stammered an explanation, repeating the vague claims about prostitution activity and matching vehicle descriptions. But Angela wasn't buying it. "This is unacceptable," Angela snapped, her tone leaving no room for argument. Reluctantly, the officers uncuffed Maya, though they did so without offering an apology. They acted as though releasing her was a favor rather than a correction of their own wrongdoing. Maya rubbed her sore wrists, trying to process everything that had happened. Even as the immediate danger passed, the weight of the experience lingered. Maya glanced at her mother, seeing the anger and concern etched on her face. For the first time that night, Maya allowed herself to fully acknowledge how frightened she had been. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away, determined not to break down in front of everyone. As the crowd began to disperse, Maya climbed into her mother's car, eager to leave the scene behind. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. The events of the evening had exposed a harsh truth, one that couldn't be ignored or swept under the rug. Something needed to change, not just for her sake, but for the countless others who faced similar injustices every single day. The accusation of solicitation hung in the air like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over everything. Maya sat silently in the passenger seat of her mother's car as they drove away from the scene, her mind replaying the officer's words over and over again. Prostitution activity. The phrase felt dirty, degrading, and completely disconnected from the reality of who she was. She couldn't understand how anyone could look at her, a young professional woman driving home after work, and assume she was involved in something so far removed from her life. Mayor Angela Thompson gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white with anger. Her jaw was clenched, and though she tried to stay composed for Maya's sake, it was clear that she was seething inside. As they turned onto a quieter street, Angela finally broke the silence. "Are you okay?" she asked, glancing briefly at her daughter before focusing back on the road. Maya hesitated before answering. Physically, she was fine. No injuries beyond the lingering ache in her wrists from the handcuffs. Emotionally, however, she felt raw and exposed. "I don't know," she admitted softly, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. "It's humiliating and infuriating." Angela nodded, her expression grim. "I can't even imagine what you're feeling right now," she said honestly. "But I promise you, we're going to figure this out. We won't let them get away with treating you or anyone else like this." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the evening settled heavily between them, filling the car with unspoken thoughts and simmering emotions. Maya wanted to believe her mother's reassurance, but part of her wondered if anything could truly fix what had happened. No amount of apologies or explanations would erase the memory of standing there in handcuffs, accused of something she hadn't done. When they arrived home, Angela ushered Maya inside and made her sit down in the living room while she prepared a cup of tea. It was a small gesture, but one that carried immense meaning. In times of crisis, Angela always turned to simple acts of care, making tea, offering blankets, ensuring everyone was comfortable. Tonight, though, these rituals felt more important than ever. They were a way of grounding themselves amidst the chaos. As Maya sipped her tea, Angela pulled out her phone and began making calls. First, she contacted the chief of police, demanding an explanation for what had happened. Then she reached out to trusted advisors within the city government, seeking guidance on how to handle the situation publicly. Finally, she called a close family friend who worked as a civil rights attorney, asking for legal advice. While Angela handled logistics, Maya retreated into her own thoughts. She replayed the events of the night in her mind, analyzing every detail. Why had the officers assumed she was involved in illegal activity? Was it because of where she had been driving? Or was it simply because of the color of her skin? These questions gnawed at her, stirring up memories of other instances when she'd faced similar biases. She thought about the time she'd been shopping at a high-end boutique downtown and noticed the security guard following her around the store. At first, she pretended not to notice, browsing casually through racks of clothes. But eventually, the scrutiny became too much to ignore. When she confronted the manager, he apologized profusely, claiming it was standard procedure to monitor all customers. Maya knew better. Standard procedure didn't explain why she was the only one being watched, or the time she'd attended a networking event for young professionals and introduced herself to a group of men in suits. One of them had smirked condescendingly and asked, "And what do you do, sweetheart?" His tone implied that whatever her answer was, it wouldn't measure up to his expectations. Maya remembered feeling both insulted and determined, refusing to let his dismissiveness shake her confidence. These experiences were different from what she'd endured tonight, but they shared a common thread: prejudice. Whether subtle or overt, intentional or unconscious bias shaped the way people interacted with her. And tonight, that bias had escalated into something far more dangerous. By the time Angela finished her phone calls, Maya was ready to talk. "Mom," she began hesitantly, "we need to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else. What those officers did, it wasn't just wrong, it was cruel. And it's not the first time something like this has happened." Angela sighed deeply, sitting down beside her daughter. "You're absolutely right," she said. "This isn't just about you. It's about a system that allows this kind of behavior to continue unchecked. But fixing it won't be easy. People will push back. They'll try to defend the officers, saying they were just doing their jobs. And some will accuse us of using your position to stir up trouble." Maya nodded, understanding the challenges ahead. "I know it won't be easy," she replied, "but I also know we can't stay silent. If we don't speak up, nothing will change." The next morning, news of the incident spread like wildfire. Footage captured by bystanders had gone viral overnight, sparking outrage across social media platforms. Hashtags like Dang Justice for Maya and Dar End Racial Profiling trended nationwide, drawing attention to the systemic issues plaguing law enforcement. Protesters gathered outside the police station, holding signs that read, "Black Lives Matter" and "Accountability Now." Their chants echoed through the streets of Crestwood, demanding justice for Maya and reform within the department. Local news outlets jumped on the story, airing interviews with witnesses who described the traffic stop in vivid detail. Many praised Maya's composure during such a traumatic experience, while others criticized the officer's actions as excessive and discriminatory. Reporters camped outside City Hall, eager to hear Mayor Thompson's response. When Angela addressed the press later that afternoon, she stood tall and resolute, flanked by members of her administration. "What happened to my daughter last night was unacceptable," she declared, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "It is a reflection of the deep-seated biases that exist within our institutions. As mayor, I am committed to addressing these issues head-on and ensuring that no one else has to endure what Maya went through." Her speech resonated with many, earning praise from activists and community leaders. However, not everyone supported her stance. Critics accused Angela of exploiting the situation for political gain, arguing that she should focus on broader issues rather than singling out individual cases. Others defended the officers, insisting that their actions were justified given the circumstances. Despite the backlash, Angela remained steadfast in her resolve. She announced plans to launch an independent investigation into the incident, calling for transparency and accountability. She also pledged to review existing policies regarding racial profiling and use of force, vowing to implement reforms where necessary. Meanwhile, Maya struggled with whether to share her side of the story publicly. On one hand, she wanted to raise awareness about the realities of racial discrimination and inspire others to join the fight for justice. On the other hand, she feared opening old wounds and subjecting herself to further scrutiny. After days of deliberation, she decided to break her silence. In a televised interview, Maya recounted every harrowing detail of her ordeal, holding nothing back. She spoke candidly about the fear, humiliation, and anger she had felt during the traffic stop. She described how the officer's refusal to acknowledge her identity had made her feel invisible, as though her worth as a human being didn't matter. And she emphasized the importance of recognizing systemic racism, urging viewers to educate themselves and take action. Her courage inspired countless others to come forward with their own stories of mistreatment by law enforcement. Women of color shared accounts of being profiled, harassed, or detained without cause. Allies amplified their voices, adding momentum to the growing movement for change. For the first time in years, it seemed as though real progress might be possible. Yet even as hope began to take root, Maya knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. Change rarely came quickly or easily, especially when it challenged deeply entrenched systems of power. But she refused to give up. With her mother by her side and a community rallying behind her, she vowed to keep fighting. For herself, for her future children, and for everyone who deserved to live free from fear and injustice. As the days turned into weeks, the momentum surrounding Maya's case only grew stronger. The incident had ignited a firestorm of activism and dialogue across Crestwood, with people from all walks of life joining forces to demand accountability and reform. Social media played a pivotal role in amplifying the message, turning what began as a local story into a national conversation about systemic racism within law enforcement. For Mayor Angela Thompson and her daughter Maya, this newfound attention brought both opportunities and challenges. The public outcry was undeniable. Protesters continued to gather outside the police station daily, their numbers swelling as more people joined the cause. Some came bearing signs that read "End Racial Profiling Now" and "Justice for All," while others held banners featuring Maya's face alongside quotes from her televised interview. The chants echoed through the streets, "No justice, no peace," and "Black Lives Matter," creating an atmosphere charged with emotion and determination. Even those who couldn't attend the rallies showed their support online, sharing posts, signing petitions, and calling local officials to voice their concerns. For Maya, watching the community rally behind her was both inspiring and overwhelming. She appreciated the outpouring of solidarity, but struggled with the spotlight it placed on her personal trauma. Every news article, every hashtag, every mention of her name served as a reminder of the night she'd been humiliated at gunpoint. It was hard to escape the weight of it all, especially when strangers approached her during protests or sent messages thanking her for speaking up. While she understood the importance of using her platform, there were moments when she wished she could retreat into anonymity and heal privately. Meanwhile, Mayor Angela Thompson found herself navigating uncharted waters. As a leader, she was used to making tough decisions and managing crises, but nothing could have prepared her for the emotional toll of seeing her own child become a symbol of injustice. Her days were filled with back-to-back meetings, press conferences, and strategy sessions aimed at addressing the root causes of racial bias and policing. Yet no matter how busy she was, Angela made sure to check in with Maya regularly, ensuring her daughter felt supported amidst the chaos. One particularly challenging aspect of Angela's role was dealing with pushback from within her own administration. Not everyone agreed with her aggressive approach to reform. Some council members argued that focusing so heavily on one incident risked alienating key allies, including influential police unions. Others suggested that Angela tone down her rhetoric, fearing it might polarize the community further. One senior advisor even warned her that pushing too hard for change could jeopardize her chances of re-election, a concern that struck a nerve, but ultimately failed to sway her resolve. "You don't get to pick and choose which injustices matter," Angela snapped during one heated meeting. "This isn't about politics. This is about doing what's right. If we lose sight of that, then what's the point of being here?" Her unwavering stance earned admiration from many, particularly activists and marginalized groups who saw her as a champion for equality. However, it also drew criticism from opponents who accused her of prioritizing optics over substance. Anonymous messages flooded her office inbox, some praising her efforts, others laced with venomous insults. A few conservative pundits took to television to denounce her actions, labeling her reforms as anti-police propaganda designed to undermine law enforcement. Despite the backlash, Angela refused to back down. Instead, she leaned into the controversy, using it as fuel to drive her agenda forward. She announced plans to hold town hall meetings where residents could share their experiences with racial profiling and suggest solutions. These events drew large crowds, with hundreds of people lining up to speak. Stories poured forth, some heartbreaking, others infuriating, all painting a vivid picture of the systemic issues plaguing the city. One woman recounted being pulled over repeatedly while driving her children to school, each time accused of having stolen her car because someone like her shouldn't own such an expensive vehicle. A teenage boy described being stopped and frisked simply for walking home late at night, despite carrying nothing but his backpack. An elderly man tearfully recalled how officers once refused to believe he lived in his own house, forcing him to produce multiple forms of identification before letting him inside. Listening to these testimonies reinforced Angela's belief that meaningful change required more than just policy updates. It demanded a cultural shift within the police department and the broader community. To address this, she proposed a series of initiatives aimed at fostering trust between law enforcement and residents. These included mandatory anti-bias training for all officers, increased transparency in disciplinary actions, and the creation of a civilian oversight board empowered to investigate misconduct complaints independently. While Angela worked tirelessly, behind the scenes Maya wrestled with whether to continue sharing her story publicly. After her initial interview, she received an overwhelming response: messages of gratitude, offers of support, and invitations to speak at rallies and conferences. At first, she embraced the opportunity, seeing it as a chance to amplify her voice and inspire others to join the fight against injustice. But as time went on, the constant visibility began taking its toll. Late one evening, Maya sat alone in her bedroom, scrolling through social media. Comments flooded her feed, some supportive, others hateful. One post caught her eye, a meme mocking her appearance, accompanied by a caption questioning whether she was truly innocent. Another commenter accused her of fabricating the entire incident to gain fame. Though Maya tried to brush off these remarks, they lingered in her mind, planting seeds of doubt and insecurity. Why does everything have to be so ugly? She muttered under her breath, closing her laptop with a sigh. Her mother knocked softly on the door a few minutes later, sensing that something was wrong. When Maya opened up about the negative comments, Angela wrapped her arms around her tightly. "You can't let them win," she said firmly. "Their words don't define you. What defines you is how you respond, with courage, with grace, and with truth." Though comforted by her mother's reassurance, Maya knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Sharing her story meant exposing herself to scrutiny, criticism, and pain, but it also meant giving a voice to those who hadn't yet found theirs. And so, after much deliberation, Maya decided to keep speaking out. She accepted invitations to participate in panel discussions, write op-eds, and meet with advocacy groups working toward similar goals. Each appearance left her drained but hopeful, knowing she was contributing to a larger movement for justice. As the weeks passed, the combined efforts of Angela and Maya began yielding tangible results. Public pressure mounted on the police department to cooperate fully with the independent investigation. Officers started undergoing sensitivity training, albeit reluctantly, and early drafts of policies aimed at reducing racial profiling were circulated for review. Though progress was slow, it was undeniable, and that gave the Thompsons reason to believe their hard work was paying off. Still, the journey was far from over. Challenges loomed on the horizon, resistance remained strong, and setbacks were inevitable. But through it all, Angela and Maya stood united, drawing strength from each other and the growing coalition of supporters around them. Together, they vowed to keep fighting, not just for themselves but for everyone who deserved to live free from fear and discrimination. The morning after the incident, Crestwood buzzed with a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief. The story of Maya Thompson's wrongful detention had spread like wildfire, fueled by viral videos and impassioned social media posts. What began as a quiet evening for one young woman had turned into a flashpoint for discussions about race, power, and accountability in law enforcement. For Mayor Angela Thompson, this was more than just a personal crisis. It was a defining moment for her leadership. Angela woke early that day, unable to shake the image of her daughter standing in handcuffs under the harsh glare of police lights. She felt a deep sense of failure, not just as a mother, but also as a public servant. How could she have let something like this happen in her own city? As mayor, she had spent years advocating for equality and justice, yet here she was, watching her child become another statistic in a long history of racial profiling. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and it left her questioning whether she had done enough, or if she'd simply been too complacent. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing since the previous night. Calls poured in from concerned citizens, activists, politicians, and even national news outlets eager to get a statement. Each call added pressure, each voice demanding answers or action. Some offered support, praising Angela for her courage in addressing the issue head-on. Others were less kind, accusing her of exaggerating the situation for political gain or using her daughter's ordeal to push an agenda. The criticism stung, but Angela knew better than to let it derail her focus. She had a job to do, and that job was protecting her community. By mid-morning, Angela held an emergency meeting with her closest advisors. They gathered in her office at City Hall, a room usually reserved for high-stakes decisions about budgets and infrastructure projects. Today, though, the stakes felt higher than ever. Sitting around the table were trusted members of her administration, including her chief of staff, legal counsel, and communications director. All eyes were on Angela as she laid out her plan. "We need to act quickly," she said, her voice firm despite the exhaustion etched on her face. "This isn't just about Maya anymore. It's about every person in this city who has ever been treated unfairly because of their race. We can't afford to waste time." Her team nodded in agreement, though some looked uneasy. They knew the challenges ahead wouldn't be easy. Addressing systemic racism within the police department meant confronting powerful unions, navigating legal complexities, and risking backlash from those resistant to change. But Angela wasn't deterred. If anything, The obstacles only strengthened her resolve. One of her advisors raised a cautious point. "Mayor Thompson, you know there will be pushback. People are already defending the officers, saying they were following protocol. How do we balance holding them accountable without alienating the entire department?" Angela sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I understand the risks," she admitted. "But staying silent is not an option. Yes, we need to work with the police department to find solutions, but we also have to hold individuals accountable when they cross the line. That's how trust is built, or rebuilt." As the meeting continued, they discussed next steps. Angela decided to launch an independent investigation into the incident, separate from the internal review conducted by the police department. This would ensure transparency and impartiality, two things sorely lacking in cases like this. She also announced plans to implement mandatory anti-bias training for all officers and establish a civilian oversight board to monitor misconduct complaints. These measures weren't new ideas. They'd been proposed before, but now, with the spotlight shining brightly, Angela hoped to finally make them a reality. Later that afternoon, Angela addressed the press outside City Hall. A sea of reporters and cameras awaited her. Their questions shouted over one another as soon as she stepped onto the podium. Angela took a deep breath, steadying herself before speaking. Behind her stood a banner bearing the city seal, a reminder of the responsibility she carried. "What happened to my daughter last night was unacceptable," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "It was wrong, it was hurtful, and it reflects a pattern of behavior that cannot continue. As your mayor, I am committed to ensuring that no one else in this city experiences what Maya went through." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "This isn't just about one traffic stop or one group of officers. It's about a system that allows racial bias to persist unchecked. And while I can't undo what happened, I can promise you this: we will take action. We will investigate fully, hold those responsible accountable, and implement reforms to prevent future incidents." Her speech earned applause from some quarters, particularly activists and community leaders who had long pushed for change. However, not everyone was convinced. Critics argued that Angela was exploiting the situation for political gain, suggesting she should focus on broader issues rather than singling out individual cases. Others defended the officers, claiming their actions were justified based on the information available to them at the time. Despite the mixed reactions, Angela remained steadfast. She knew that true progress often came with resistance, especially when challenging deeply entrenched systems of power. Still, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on her shoulders. Balancing her role as both a grieving mother and a determined leader was no small feat. That evening, Angela returned home to find Maya curled up on the couch, scrolling through social media on her phone. The house was unusually quiet, save for the soft hum of the television in the background. Seeing her daughter so withdrawn broke Angela's heart. Gone was the confident, outspoken young woman who had always been ready to fight for what was right. In her place was someone grappling with trauma and uncertainty. "Hey," Angela said gently, sitting down beside Maya. "How are you holding up?" Maya shrugged, setting her phone aside. "I don't know," she admitted. "It's weird. On one hand, I'm glad people are talking about this stuff, but on the other hand, it's exhausting. Everyone wants to hear my story, but sometimes I just want to forget it ever happened." Angela nodded, understanding completely. "You don't have to share anything you're not ready for," she reassured her. "Your healing comes first. Everything else can wait." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy yet comforting, a shared acknowledgement of the pain they both carried. Finally, Maya broke it. "Mom, do you think anything will actually change? Or are we just shouting into the void?" Angela reached over and took Maya's hand in hers. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she said softly. "But I believe in this city. I believe in its people. And I believe in us. Together, we'll keep pushing until we see results." Maya managed a small smile, squeezing her mother's hand tightly. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's do it." Over the coming days, the conversation surrounding Maya's case grew louder and more urgent. Protesters marched through the streets of Crestwood, their chants echoing off buildings and resonating with anyone listening. Community meetings drew record attendance, with residents sharing stories of their own encounters with discrimination. Even local businesses joined the movement, displaying signs in their windows that read, "Black Lives Matter" and "Justice for Maya." Through it all, Angela and Maya stood side by side, united in their mission to create lasting change. Though the road ahead promised challenges, they faced it together, mother and daughter, advocate and survivor, bound by love and purpose.